I don't remember. Change this thing back to the
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the third day of IIFT Delhi's International Business Conclave, Trade Wins, where we've been talking about the theme of India at 100. Now we're starting with our first summit of the day, the National Trade Summit. This summit is managed and organized by BLASH, the Trade Club, and IBC, the International Business Cell of IIFT Delhi. The sub-theme for the summit is Trade as a Pillar to Build a Competitive and Resilient Export-Based Indian Economy. We're looking forward to a fruitful discussion to help all of us understand the future of trade as a business activity in India and India's prospect as an export-based economy. Now I'd like Team BLASH and IBC to take over so that we can take further the summit. Thank you.
India has overwhelmingly done well in many sectors. However, there's always a scope to ever improve, not only our targets, but also the milestones, thus leveraging a number of socio-economic missions to accelerate the process of economic development to the next level. Even if India has become the 5th largest economy of the world, let's also accept that it is the home to the largest number of poor in the world. Similarly, India has indeed made strides in international trade in recent decades, but its rank as 18th largest exporter and 10th largest as an importer speaks volumes for the scope of improvement that India needs to pursue in excel in international trade. Good morning, everyone. Looks like the day is murky outside, but inside the winds are flowing in the right direction as we all set to begin the day 3 of the most awaited National Trade Summit. Under the aegis of Trade Winds, the Trade Society of IIFT Delhi is proud to host this year's National Trade Summit with the theme Trade as a Pillar to Build a Competitive and Resilient Export-Based Indian Economy. With no further delay, I would like now request the panel to come onto the stage, please. We are delighted to introduce our panel of guests, starting with Mr. Sanjay Sacheti. Mr. Sanjay Sacheti has been serving as a country head, India region to Olam Agri since 2004. An alumnus of University of Rajasthan, where he pursued a Bachelor's of Commerce, Mr. Sacheti went on to become a chartered accountant. In 2000, he joined Olam Agro and is currently the CEO of Olam Agri India's business. With 22 years of experience and expertise in international trade, his areas of expertise lies in building customer-centric food ingredients, oriented businesses spanning across multiple products like rice, cotton, grain, and green beans, etc. As well, meeting the requirements of FMCG companies, modern retail, and the quick service restaurant sector. We are very eager to host you, sir. Now, I request
Next, we are delighted to introduce Mr. Alim Mukherjee, sir, the Chief Operating Officer of NCDEX, Institute of Commodity Markets and Research, NICR, and Head of FPO Strategy at the National Commodities and Derivative Exchange, one of India's largest commodity exchange, and also the COO of NICR, an agri-consulting organization with the agri domain. He did his graduation in agriculture and completed his executive education in international business from IIM Ahmedabad. He is also known for leading the creation of national-level electronics negotiable warehouse receipts, known as ENWR system, a path-breaking step in the area of agriculture commodity financing. In a career spanning 25 years across countries including India, West and East Africa, Mr. Mukherjee worked as a development professional and an entrepreneur and has done multiple hats. Over his career, he has held multiple roles in various organizations including Sisti Consultants, 7-Star, USAID Windrock International, and Tata Zambia. We at IIFT are eagerly waiting to hear from you, sir, and learn from your knowledge and expertise. We would now like to welcome you, sir, with a bouquet of flowers. Our next panelist is Mr. Pranav Arora. Mr. Arora is an IIFT alum from the batch of 2013. He has a rich experience of nearly 19 years in various segments of the international supply chain. Currently, he heads the regulatory affairs and process excellence of EXIM at subcontinent level for DP World. Prior to that, Mr. Arora led the corporate affairs team and new business development projects of JM Baxi Group. He previously led the Delhi regulatory team of Arcia Limited, wherein he represented the company at various ministries and allied offices. Some of his special areas of interest include dealing with senior bureaucrats at both state and central levels for policy advocacy, global EXIM trade, trade compliance, liquor excise, corporate and regulatory affairs, as well as setting up and operationalization of ICDs, free trade and warehousing zones, PBWs and microbreweries. We welcome you, sir. We would now like to welcome you, sir, with a bouquet of flowers.
Our next guest is Mr. Rajiv Yadav, an alumnus of IIFT, who is currently serving as the Senior Vice President, Supply Chain Business at Origo. He earlier served in the Indian Army as a commissioned officer for 6 years and then went on to work in prestigious companies like Cargill, where he worked as a trader, Olam, where he worked as a general manager, vice president at COFCO International, and general manager at United Breweries. He's a seasoned professional with 18 plus years of experience in commodity trading across functions like procurement, sourcing, and selling. His expertise lies in domestic as well as international trading of grains, oilseeds, and pulses. We welcome you, sir, and we would now like to welcome you with us with your applause. Our next panelist is Mr. Sunil Rallan, founder and chairman of J. Matadi Agro Private Limited, J. Matadi Industrial Parks Private Limited, Rallan Foreign Trade Company Private Limited, among others. He has developed India's first free trade and warehousing zone in Chennai in 2008, and he has been associated with J. Matadi Free Trade Zone Private Limited for the past 16 years, where he is working as the chairman and managing director. We are eagerly waiting to hear your views in this discussion as well. We would now request you to, we will welcome you with a bouquet of flowers. Our next panelist is Mr. Anjan Mandal, Head of Pharma Brands at Swiss India Venture Innotera, an alumnus of IIFT, batch of 96. Mr. Anjan is an agri-business expert with over 25 years of experience in agri-commodity procurement, warehousing, and supply chain management. His expertise and interests lie in agri-business, procurement and market linkages, agri-tech value chain financing, agri-banking, and SCM. He has previously worked as a manager at Cargill, head of business development at NCDEX, senior VP at Yes Bank, COO at NCML, and also worked at the Agritech DHeart. He's currently head of farmer brands at Swiss India Venture, where his focus is to connect farmers with the markets. We are looking forward to hear from you in the panel on from an agro industry perspective. We would now like to welcome you.
Last but not the least, we are delighted to introduce our moderator for the day, Mr. Nikhil Goyal. An alumnus of IIFT Delhi from the batch of 2009, Mr. Nikhil Goyal is currently the director of Deshbandhu Group, where he has worked for the last 8 years. Prior to that, Mr. Goyal served as a trading manager at Renuka Commodities DMCC. He completed his bachelor's in BTech from Dhirubhai Institute of Information and Communication Technology in 2007 and has been associated with multiple organizations, including Renuka Commodities and PEC Limited in his long career. We are very delighted to have you here, sir, and we would now like to welcome you with the bouquet.
We now extend an invitation to all the panelists to join us in launching Inside Trade 2022, the annual trade magazine, as a part of the summit. The magazine consists of winning articles from the National Article Writing Competition conducted by the Trade Society of IIFT Delhi, which saw a huge participation of 200 plus students. In addition, it consists of views of some experienced individuals and alumni of IIFT. With a focus on the role of exports in the Indian economy and brief overview of multiple aspects involving trade facilitation, these articles offer incredible insights into addressing the problems associated with the future of trade and the opportunities that lie within. We have 3 recent editions, the superlatives of the trade dictionary, Tap the Map, and a trade crossword for all our readers to increase their subject knowledge whilst learning about its future. I now request our esteemed trade faculty, Dr. Ram Singh Sir and Dr. MP Sir to please join the panelists on the stage and launch our magazine. I now request our moderator, Mr. Nikhil Goyal, to please take the session forward.
Thank you for this wonderful session today, which I'm sure is going to be enlightened with the views of our eminent panelists. So to start with, we start with Mr. Rajiv Yadav, where he can enlighten with his thoughts.
How do I move to the next slide?
The app.
Yes.
Either you can use the down and up.
Guys, good morning. A lot of formalities have been completed, right? You're getting enough and vote. Nevertheless, I would request you to just stand up and cheer for yourself. Just stand up. Just stand up. Thank you. Thank you so much. Just cheer. I'll tell you the reason honestly. I'll tell you the reason. Sit down now. Sit down. Relax. I'll tell you the reason honestly. You know, my previous boss, Mr. Sanjay Sacheti, is here. You know, when he heard ex-IIFT alumni, he was shocked. You know, but let me take you to the background. So during my childhood, I could not clear the IIFT test. Okay? So I was not a regular student like Nikhil, who is one of the panelists out here. So that's one of the reasons. But out here we have Mr. Ram Singh, under whom I did 1 year of some training, and because of which I am being called as alumni of IIFT. That's an honor to me. So thank you guys for having me here, and indeed thanks to Ram Singh sir. Having said so, now, you know, moving forward to the topic, you know, guys, just a brief introduction, as I don't know whether it was said in the introduction or no. I'm an ex-army officer of Indian Army. I have the pleasure of gunning down 3 Ulfa militants and getting the Sena Medal Gallantry Award. So that's the brief introduction. But it was a short stint of about 6 years, and that's somehow some reasons came into picture wherein I decided to move into the corporate world. I was kind enough to have one of the, again, IIFT alumnus, Mr. Sanjeev Asthana. I don't know how many of you would have heard about his name. He was ex-Kargil head at that point of time. He hired me as a national operations manager. Thereafter, my second job was under Mr. Sanjay Sacheti as a general manager. And thereafter, I moved into COFCO. So enough and brief, you know, and currently I'm with Origo Commodities as a senior vice president. Through and through, I have been into commodities. That's a brief introduction about me. Now coming on to the main topic, because I have been assigned only 10 minutes, I'll move forward. India at 100. I am only going to specifically, since I've been into commodities, I'm only going to specify about agricultural growth. So this is, okay, let me leave, no, I'll not get into the much of the details. We are a supply chain oriented company. Till in this financial year, we have done 850 crores. The target for the year is about 2,000 crores. So that's in brief. I will not take these are the four products which we get into, which is basically a short-term lending and a long-term lending, which is called as structured trade finance. We also have an electronic platform by the name of Origo e-Mandi. So wherein the buyers and sellers, something like what NCDX does, they can come on board and trade in open. And then we have a e-Mandi Cash as the fourth product, wherein we try and so that's a huge progress which India has done over the period of time. Probably there is a further scope of improvement, which I'm going to talk about later. If you look at the rice exports, we have grown significantly. I mean, if you look at the last year numbers, we were somewhere close to 22 million tons of rice exports. This year, obviously, the government has banned the broken rice exports and raised the export duty to 20%. And to me, honestly, it's not a wrong decision. As when the nations get into controversies, it is more important to first take care of yourself and your people, your country, and that's where I am okay with that decision. There were a lot of repercussions out of that. A lot of supplies were impacted and all that stuff. But on a larger scale, I would say I would go with that decision of the government, wherein it was a right time to ban, because the important thing is to first self-cater your own population. Because today, if I continue exporting, I don't want to be importing at double the price tomorrow, whether it is wheat or whether it is rice. So that's my take on the topic. This is exactly what I was talking about as far as wheat production. If you look at, we have grown at almost about 4% year on year, which is a significant growth, and I hope we continue to progress on that manner. We have a lot of in rice, in sugar, in guar gum, in soya meal, and in rapeseed meal. These are the major projects from the agricultural commodities which we have been exporting. If you look at the values, the values are there in my slides. I'll be happy to share the presentation with all the young kids which are coming up, and they are going to be the bright futures of this agri industry, I'm assuming. Yes, this is the slide which I like the most. There are some of the things which are very heavy on our Indian exchequer. Now, which are these things? Edible oil. I mean, we are so heavily dependent. 60% of its domestic requirement is catered by importing. Now, whatever imports we even the pulses, on a year-on-year basis, we are importing about 6 to 7 billion tons of pulses, and that has led to a heavy burden onto the Indian exchequer. Can we do something about it? Because at the end of the day, the sowing is ours, the farmers are ours, the land is ours. We can change. So that's something which we have to look at on a very, very long-term basis for making India a very, very sustainably agricultural country. Ethanol program, that has been one of the great successes of the current government, if I may say so. You know, we have already achieved the target of 10%. We have the ambition of achieving 20%. That's on the way. I'm personally providing grains to so many of the grain-based ethanol factories, and that's the business which is going to prosper, and that's going to be one of the most environment friendly feature, which is going to be a great success from the current government. What more can be done? Probably we need the usage of the hybrid seeds, precision farming, sowing and harvesting at a defined time period, following good agriculture practice, and bringing technological advancement in agri practices like the usage of the drones and etc. This is again one of the slides which I always present in many public forums, you know. So somehow the government has always made it mandatory for the usage of the jute bags. Now, if you look at the developed nations, you know, they never move their grains, any of the grains or the agri produce in the jute bags. But in India, it is compulsory to move the food grains in jute bags. So that's a burden, you know, because that unnecessarily creates complications, that unnecessarily forces the manual usage, the manual labor to come into existence. Obviously, we are still manual loading, unloading of grains and blah, blah, blah. Our port handling capacity is also limited. So if you look at, you know, whenever I have to export and import any commodity, you know, we have the limitations. The most important thing which we were discussing when we were inside the room, and Sanjay sir, this is to your point, India is struggling to attract the private investment in agriculture due to inconsistent government policies. The government policies have been very inconsistent, you know, sudden abrupt disruptions in the trade policies. They have always kept the private trade away from the investment, and inefficiency in logistics adds to another 6 to 8% in our cost. That's all I have to say. My moderator said it's time, and thankfully my thank you slide is there. Thanks a lot, guys.
We now have the next panelist, Mr. Sanjay Sacheti from Mulayam Agro India Private Limited. Over to you, sir. Good morning. What a lovely day to come over and interact with the group here. Thank you so much for putting me out of my slightly light slumber on a perfect weather day. It was lovely driving down here. The city is looking completely washed, and the ride was very smooth. Really enjoyed being here. It's a pleasure meeting some old friends like Rajiv, Anjan, and Aleen, and also making acquaintances with new friends like Nikhil, Sunil, and Pranav, and also the fortune of meeting Dr. Ram Singh and Mr. Singh again. India 100, I think the most relevant part is this generation, right? I would be somewhere, by the beach side when India turns 100. But this is the generation which is going to really take India to where we currently aspire to be, right? Ever since the country leadership gave this clarity, India at 100, and trying to work up the imagination of the countrymen about what India should look at 100. There has been a lot of discussions, deliberations in various forums. But the focal point is, I think, this generation, in my opinion, because I feel that some of you would be entrepreneurs, some of you would be business leaders, some of you would be startup founders. I hope, and you contribute in your own unique way towards building that aspiration which we currently have for India. It's very exciting. The events which have played out over the last 3-4 years. I think India, fortunately or unfortunately, it has placed India as a country in a very different way. And I think we are better positioned not to really derive any sadistic pleasure out of the misery of certain other countries. But I think truly we are well positioned to really grow at a fast clip. And if my math serves me right, I think if you were to grow at even at a CAGR of 7% over the next 25 years, by 2047, we should be certainly a $10 billion plus economy at constant prices. I would say around 12 to 13 billion. We are already the 5th largest economy in the world, slated to be the 3rd largest economy by 2030. In my reckoning, I think we should reach there by 2027 to 2028, because others probably their rate of growth would get moderated, and ours we have the opportunity to accelerate. Given the endowments we have and given the geopolitical factors which are playing out in our favor. If that were to happen, if the 7% growth has to happen, history has told us that there's no other country which has consistently grown at 7% or higher unless and until trade is an important part of that country's economy. You have to be a large exporter. You look at the Southeast Asian countries, some of the Latin American countries, the US, or some of the European countries in the post-war times. They've all relied on exports. Don't take it very frivolously. I call it the teen patti phenomenon. In a teen patti table, how do you get richer? You get richer at the expense of other players, not really at the expense of other players, but by playing with them and winning there. And trade is all about that. You have the global teen patti table, and you have to play effectively and win on that table. And that's what trade is all about. How do you get the right terms of trade? How do you position the economy and your country favorably on that? Because that's what is very important. You have to be seen as a large, consistent, reliable player in the global game. So investments have to go towards building brand India. And when I talk about brand India, that's the first level. The second level is the brand corporate. So if it is, let's say, a Unilever as an exporter or a ITC as an exporter, they have to build their individual brands in the global community as a reliable exporting corporate. The third one is product India, produce of India. So brand India is the reliability of the country. Brand corporate is the reliability of the corporate, and the third one is the goodness of the produce of India. So be it tea, exotic teas, good quality mangoes, grapes, floriculture, coffee, any of these. I'm talking about my domain, which is the agricultural produce. You have to build that brand, and I think that is one of the foremost initiatives which have to now go. You have to take that very seriously. Indians have been largely commodity producers, exporters of undifferentiated commodities, and you leave a lot of value on the teen patti table for somebody else to appropriate. You cannot do that. You have to appropriate that value for the country, and you do it by branding yourself and getting those brand premiums there. Brand premiums and also the market shares in the global trade, because people have to be attracted towards it. The second part, in my opinion, given whatever experience we have had, is how do you have the right trade relationships? Global trade trading world is a very complex world, and people have preferential relationships. Preferential relationships determine market share and value. How do you position the country in that complex world? By having the right kind of relationships, be it through free trade agreements, be it through bilateral arrangements, be it through any other arrangements on specific issues with your potential and current trading partners. So let's say if you were to export, again I would take an agricultural produce. Let's say if you were to export the spices to let's say EU, and EU is a very finicky country, finicky geography. There are some very stringent regulations and sometimes impractical regulations for import of various agricultural produce. How do you interact with them? How do you influence them? And how do you make them understand that natural produce, with whatever unique features it has, how do they get the right specifications for those products so that Indian produce is exportable and is acceptable in those countries, rather than suffering multiple non-tariff barriers in those countries? You cannot allow that. And you ought to work very closely by striking the right relationships, doing the right negotiations, striking the right quid pro quo with these countries. Because they also need us, they need our markets. India obviously is a country with 1.34 billion people, a huge market, which is growing at a fast clip of 6, 7, 8%, wherever you would consider that growth rate. And if we don't know how to strike the right bargain there, we again leave value on the table. And India has not been historically very good with trade pacts or these kind of bilateral agreements. And we need to really develop a high level of expertise there. I'm very happy when I read about the Ministry of Commerce's initiative about setting up a specialist body only to negotiate trade pacts. It is something which is very, very important. I can give you the example of a country like Vietnam. Vietnam is one of the smartest countries in the world in terms of striking the right trade agreements. They have actually positioned themselves very, very carefully. Look at their relationship with China. They've got a preferential relationship with them. They've got the best trade pact with EU, again a very large market. Another trade agreement with Japan, which is a very, very valuable market, a premium paying market. If you can consistently export into Japan, it's the most profitable market, but you have to meet their requirements. So they've not only got into those kind of trade pacts, but they've also ensured that their supply chain is completely oriented to the unique, highly differentiated requirements of that country. And that's when you may have a trade pact, but after that you have to also have a very high utilization rate, as it is called in trade terms. So you have a beneficial provision in a trade pact, but if your industry is not able to utilize it, what's the use of that in the trade pact? So they have got a very high utilization rate. Look at India. India struck what was seen as a very beneficial trade agreement with ASEAN sometime in the 2000s. What has happened now? The trade deficit with ASEAN has more than quadrupled because they are the smarter people. They have actually utilized their beneficial provisions in the trade pact beautifully. And they have a utilization rate of something like 70-75%. India, on the other side, has a utilization rate of 20 to 25%. So that's the ignominy which we suffer even when the negotiators do. So this is, these are the two parts which I would, in the interest of time, talk about from the demand side, building brand India, having the right trade pacts. There are multiple other things which you can do. On the supply side, I think there are 2-3 enabling things which we can do. Certain things the government has to do, and the government has to do in terms of the kind of trade-oriented policies which they have. And Rajiv alluded to that in some ways in his presentation. So policies in terms of how do you promote trade, how do you attract foreign direct investment, get the largest firms, the most well-positioned firms in the world of global trade. How do you get them here? Second part is how do you facilitate trade, the trade documentation, digitization of documentation backbone, the port turnaround times, investment in infrastructure right from the point of origin till the ports and beyond, investing in shipping lines, investing in containers, multiple things which the government can do, and with or without the partnership of the private sector. The other part is how do you align the supply chain? Again, to give you align the supply chain to global requirements. India is very good at producing, but producing it for the export markets is a little alien to us because we are not export oriented still. Exports are apparently $400 billion. Why I call pantry is that for a country which is aspiring to grow at 7%, it should be something like 20 to 25% of your GDP. A 3 billion economy exporting only $400 billion, that's not sufficient. We ought to be very close to $1 trillion. When that were to happen, if that were to happen, that would happen only if the supply chain is completely oriented towards export. The standards, so your domestic standards have to be closer to export standards, right? Because you produce, then the firm would be forced to produce the quality which would be acceptable in the global markets as well. So, how do you align the complete supply chain? How do you make the firms and the domestic industry open up for global competition? So your tariff barriers, your non-tariff barriers, you have to look at all that. What will make the firms competitive in terms of cost and delivery, and two, in terms of quality, which is again the bane of Indian exporters. The kind of rejections which we face in the global markets. I can talk about again my experience with agricultural produce. In line with the EU standards or the US standards, so that at the point of origin itself you are able to control quality. What kind of GMP processes you adopt in food processing? What kind of logistics in terms of cold storage, in terms of the completely seamless cold chain right till the markets, till the end markets, are you able to set up? The port turnaround times, the capacity at the ports. All these issues are very, very important as far as aligning the supply chain for export markets. So I would conclude by saying that you have to have a holistic view there, but exports and trade are absolutely critical for growing India at the rate of 7% and plus, which is the aspiration for all. And if this were to happen, all of us would see an economy which will be among the top two, if not top two, among the top three economies by the time we are in 2047. And this generation would enjoy that and will feel proud about that achievement as we go along. All the best. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sanjay Sacheti. So, kind views. So, we have the next panelist, Mr. Ali Mukherjee. If you can kindly share his views with us.
It's quite difficult after Mr. Sacheti has spoken. I mean, some of the thoughts which I was writing down, I mean, he has already touched upon. So I don't know, as an initial intro, what I'm going to speak. So we have to reconjure my thoughts. So first of all, thank you very much, and thank you, Ram sir, for putting my name here and allowing me to interact with IIFT students and faculty. So Sone ki Chidiya, is where we need to go towards. But that's not an easy task, right? So absolutely not. But that is where I think the your generation should come forward. You know, our life is almost going to get over in the next 5-10 years, I guess, and maybe beach
20 years.
20 years. Okay for you. I take that back. I will go to the hilly areas rather than to the beach side, hopefully. But if you look at this Sone ki Chidiya GDP growth, if you want to achieve, what are the areas we need to look at? You know, within that parlance of trade, because that is the focus of our discussion here. I'm sure you are maybe all aware the company which I represent is National Commodities and Derivatives Exchange. You know, what we do is we help market discover prices and allow them to manage their price risk. So when we talk about trade, we talk about risks, right? So I think Sanjay also alluded to the brand building, the terms of the trade. And when you have these issues coming in your global trade, even in your domestic trade, at the end of the day, the trade will survive if your bottom line survives, right? Profitability, your cash flow survives. And within the trade, especially luckily, we all are from agri background, it seems, in terms of agricultural trade. So we are going to take examples of agri produce. Being seasonal in nature, affected by weather conditions and even maybe government policies, the prices becomes very volatile. If the prices are volatile, your bottom line or your top line gets impacted from a trade perspective. So if you have to survive in the trade line, I'm sure you build in your margins. But the way the competition is going up, you know, whether globally or domestically, your margin gets thin. And if your margin gets thin, you need to ensure that you manage your price risk, whether through various tools which are available. So one of the tools which are available in the market is through the derivatives price risk management, and that's what we provide. So that becomes very, very important aspect. The other area of trade is to look at, as been alluded to by the previous speakers, in the supply chain aspects, you know, from farm gate till the production center, till the consumption center. What a lot of time we miss is that what the market demands is not what is being produced at the farm gate. So how do we connect these two things? Because everybody is working in silos in terms of what the market needs. Very few companies are actually go back to the end to the production ecosystem. And going forward, I think those are the streamlining of supply chain which people were talking about earlier. You guys need to focus on as you go out in the marketplace. That brings in the efficiency, that brings in the better manageable supply chain, that brings in the helps in building the brand, that helps in building your trust. Trust builds in better trade terms build in better cash flow. So you need to look at that angle as you go forward. Yes, there are quite a few things which government is supposed to do. Privates cannot do because of the scalability and the kind of strength which is required. But within that ecosystem, I think there are a lot of opportunities for private players as well to do. Another figure, I don't actually recollect my figures as of now. One of the way the economic indicator to track agricultural growth, specifically we are talking about agri here, is the gross capital formation in the country in the agricultural domain. And if you track past 15-20 years, the gross capital formation in the Indian agricultural by the private players has been actually quite low. What does it tell us? That tells us is that we are not focused, or our private enterprises are not focused on building a resilient supply chain. We are opportunistic in nature. And that needs to change. So to sustain trade, I will maybe conclude here. We can, I don't know how much time I'm left with. To sustain trade, I will connecting all these back to the trade aspect. right? So to sustain trade, you need to ensure you have the infrastructure in place by the private or by the government. You have to ensure that you are working in the supply chain more efficiently. To sustain trade, you have to ensure that the price volatility which is out there in the whichever commodities or produce you are trying to deal with are taken care by various tools which are there, and of course the transparency into the ecosystem. So for that, another aspect which I think I missed out is the innovation part. We are not innovators. I mean, I know it. I sound like cynic here, but I think as you go, the reason I am putting this out to you guys as a young guys, when you go out, you know, whether you become an entrepreneur or a private company, look at that aspect, the innovation aspect. We talk about agri-tech giants in the startup, right? 1,500 or 1,900 companies. I think 1,200 of them are trading brokers. We are also that. I mean, we are a market platform. There are e-commerce. That's not innovation. So look at the innovation factors out there within your supply chain. So see how you can actually inculcate that habit of creating, bringing in better R&D spend within that ecosystem. Ultimately, it will sustain the trade, and that will bring us to the golden Chiria era once again. Thank you, and we will discuss, I think, going forward more.
Thank you, Mr. Ali, for your kind views and your insights on what NCDS is doing. Next, we have Mr. Anjan Mandal from Innotera, and if he can kindly tell us about the market.
So while he's putting up the slides, yes, done. So while he's putting up the slides, I'll just take 3-4 slides to just to tell you about what Innotera is and what we do. So Innotera is basically a Swiss Indian venture, which has been into India since almost more than a decade. We work in two parts. We work in nutrition and we also work in the platforms business. Well-known companies which you guys would have heard from our stable there's a company called Desai Agri-Foods, which is India's topmost banana exporter. We export about 400 crores of bananas to Dubai and a lot of other countries. So Desai Agri-Foods is our company. We also have another company called Milk Lane, which is a Bangalore-based milk company. We are into collection of milk. We collect about 1.5 lakh liters of milk every day. And we continued our business even during COVID times. We collected the milk. Maybe we could not supply it to the consumers or the companies, but we converted it into skimmed milk powder, SMP. And then we have a distribution company called Districo. So these are 3-4 various things which Innotera does. We also we also are into the business which I represent is the Innotera platforms, and where we work as a platform and we present products and companies from different FPOs. Okay. So we work with when I say farmers, producers, especially from the agriculture sector. So we work with FPO organizations which are from NABCons, NAB Foundation, which is a NABARD-based, NABARD promoted foundation. We work with farmers from the SFAC group. We also work with state governments of Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, etc., etc. And we what we do is that we work with the farmers and FPOs in the sector, primarily in the agriculture sector, and we pick up their products and we convert them into brands. And how do we help these small FPOs and farmers? We get them to comply with various regulations, FSSAI, etc. We standardize the product. We get their produce to standardize them. We help in marketing and distribution. We also do the tech integration and training and handholding of these products is what we do. I'll just show you. So this is some of the engagement of our products. If you can see all these brands, you can see all the small brands which we have built upon. What we do is like we pick up products from farmers and FPOs. We get them processed. So these are all small things. And somebody was talking about brand building. You guys would also having classes in marketing about branding, etc., etc. So everybody knows it's a very tough job. What we do is we convert their products and we try and bring them and launch them into branding, which all the expenses are taken care by Innoterra. So we get these FPOs, get their produce, put them into brands, and then we try and sell them through the FPO brand. And we're also trying to bring an Innoterra brand under which all these products will be available. I mentioned Districo, and we try and market linkage these products. So what we do is we have a distribution companies by which we sell. We also have a company which is we have an e-commerce platform by which we are just like Amazon or Flipkart. We're trying to we already know. I'll come to the most interesting part. So that is what I'm talking about. Agri-tech, agri supply chain management, is a very hot area for everybody in India. Currently, we would have heard of many new companies, Dehat, Bijak, etc., etc. So these companies are getting a lot of attention. They are getting a lot of, they're creating a lot of value, and that's why. So this is just the kind of interest which agri-tech has been getting into. India is what I just wanted to show, that 4 times growth across just year to year is what we're talking about. Some of the examples of how the agri-techs are making a difference. So if you can see, from the farmer to the consumer, so there are different companies which are working. There are companies like Dehat who are working in the collection of produce from the farmers. You have companies which are working with mandis, agri-mandis kind of a thing, APMCs, agri-techs who are working. So you have Jumbo Tail, you have Udans, and they are following different models. We are following models of general trade. We are following models of Horeca. So there's Waycool, Ninja Cart, all these companies are growing in a different, which, and finally connecting to the farmers. And there's definitely a value which these companies are creating. There are 2-3 different segments of agri-tech kind of a thing, in which we talk about tech and agri. So there is primarily the areas are in the input. Input is what we call seeds, fertilizers, chemicals kind of a thing. And so agri-tech companies are working primarily in the area of input. They're also working in the area of output, which is the produce after it is harvested. So the distribution, which we just spoke about, and they are also working in the areas of precision farming, which is how the productivity of each particular land can be increased. So these are 3 prime areas which they are doing. Again, this is an example where even in the output vertical, I mentioned you input, output, and precision agriculture. Even in the output vertical, there are so many different categories where they are working. So they are business to business output platforms. So you have companies like Dehat, Agrico, Kisanwala, number of them. Then there are focused trade platforms like Aggregator, Poshan, Godam. Then there are platforms for commission agents and middlemen. So you have Onato, Bijak kind of a thing. Then you have platform specific supply. So even the 3 distinct areas, and even in each distinct areas, there are different kind of a specialized focus which is being made. Technology, precision farming. So somebody spoke about drones. So they are drones which are being used by different companies. And I've tried to segment like which company is focusing. So this is something which, when we talk about agri-tech, when we talk about funding, when we talk about private equity interest, etc. So these are the companies which are working in these areas. So we have drones where we have General Aeronautics, number of companies. Then we have IoT devices where companies like Fasal, Krishi Tantra, etc. working. Satellite imagery. So a lot of remote sensing data is being utilized to promote precision agriculture. Then you have machines like robots, mechanization tools, etc. where companies like Tropin, etc. working. And what is the approach towards working with farmers, FPOs for the better? So the companies, whatever, we should be trying to purchase the entire basket of produce, because the farmer can bring different grades of produce. He will bring grade 1, he will bring grade 2, but then the companies need to produce even the inferior quality from the farmers. Second is the gross margins over gross mercantile value. So not only focusing just on the turnover part, but also focusing on the gross margin part. On-ground presence, again, like it's actually agriculture actually requires on-ground presence, especially in imports, pesticides, those areas. And finally, the working capital, which is required to be in this particular sector. This is something which I just made a while on the way here. So what are the opportunities, especially when you're talking about 2047? What are the opportunities? Done, rice, including rice was being done, cashew, fruits, a lot of opportunities, bananas, apples. So we export a lot of bananas. As I told you, Desai Agri Foods, our company, exports over 400 crores of bananas. We export a lot of apples from Himachal also. We also import a lot of kiwis and again apples. So when the apple season doesn't hit here, we also import a lot of apples from Iran, countries like Iran, etc., which we do. Coming to challenges, again, I have written the same thing, the wheat exports, so suddenly in the middle of month of May, the policy was changed, and whatever, so we were trying to ship goods to the ports, and all of a sudden, we are trying to see that what do we do with the goods which are already in the ports, because exports was banned. So where do we sell those particular cargo? Some of the cargo which was there. Rice exports, again, which was banned, which was curtailed for a particular group of commodities. Challenges are in terms of aggregation. How do we aggregate a particular commodity, quality of a commodity per se? Working capital definitely remains the challenge for almost everybody in this particular business. So this is an example where we talk about aggregation and collaboration. So I've just tried to pull together something where we were doing so salmon, which is from a fishiculture thing, salmon, which is produced very well in the UK, and UK is one of the largest exporters of salmon, but again it is consumed a lot in India. And whereas shrimp India is a large producer of shrimp, and again it can collaborate with the UK and export its shrimp to this. So it's some of the examples of the thing which I wanted to bring about. And I think that's about it. One point I just wanted to mention. I was reading your magazine, so there are two very interesting articles. Why did the fish not fry or not dry? Written by Niranjan Ritani from Olam. Very interesting. You guys should read this. And second is the banking. Again, bringing the aspects of the banking and the NBFC finance. So I don't know how many of you actually read it, but it's a very good kind of a thing, and it will bring a lot of perspective to you guys also. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anjan Mandal, for elaborating on farm to fork models. So next we have Mr. Sudhir, and he will educate us on his free trade zones based in Chennai.
Slide. Yeah. Slide. Okay. Word file. This document. This one will be there. Which one is? Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Just okay. I'll just share this.
The right place at the right time in your generation. And India at 100, which is 25 years from today, is where all of you are going to play a very key and an important role in shaping the growth and the potential of India. I want to talk to you more about the opportunities that you have going ahead of you. You know, a lot has been spoken and said about